Okay. Should be working. Looks like it. Review the code analysis. Let's remove that. Commit. Module. Push. So a lot of changes coming. Let's see. Well, good morning, Sally. Good morning, Dota. Good morning. Sorry, I caught the bright red of Sally's name first. I've been asking ChatGPT all the ways I can modernize software. Come up with anything imaginative? Modernize from what to what is another question there. Serverless migration. So moving to functions and function apps, etc. Chain integration. Wow, let's get on with it. Let's get moving. Okay. All possible code, lift and shift. Replatform, lift, tinker and shift. Refactor. That's not. Rewrite. Some of these are variations on the theme, though. Some of these are very. Some of them are possible because of other things. Well, they're the same thing from a lot of directions. Are just where the energy is spent. So re-engineer and re-architect are going to be medium re-engineer, progressive modernization. This re-engineer, re-architect, and strangler fig are overlapping. Strangler fig is putting new functionality in place of old, which is the same as re-engineering, gradual migration. If you, depending on how you're doing it as well, if you're designing new components, then you're technically doing the replace part or the rewrite part, right? So headless architecture, separating front end and back end via APIs. That's my favorite way to build the software in the first place. Don't have tight link. Yeah. Blockchain integration, very long. I mean, I'm not sure that's a how to get to modernizing the software. That's introducing a technology because you can. Um, Multi-tenancy enablement is a requirement, not a way of doing something. Um, that's a dangerous one. Low code, no code replacement. Those tools often are, oh, we don't need to develop it. That's DeepSeek. I want it will think for 5 minutes. Dear. AI. Thought provoking, if nothing else. Okay, so last night I got the permissions piece up and running for the app again. The settings screen was completely balked because they deprecated some of the controls. I want to write, put like 20 options. You could consolidate some of those down. I mean, if you depending on the scale of your application, depending on the investment in the application, depending on, and I mean investment from many points there, um, your options are limited, right? You don't often get to build a greenfield project where there was previously one. You're oftentimes, so greenfield is brand new software, no looking at the other stuff. Brownfield would be the rebuilding of the software in a new style. Based around the old one. Um, but I would say you would rarely get the chance to rebuild an application or look at it in that sort of depth if it's a successful application. So it does depend upon many factors as to whether you're going to get to do that. What changed then? Yeah, I understood why, but I'm saying what I was saying there was it's that's more of a that's not a how to modernize your software. That's a concern you might have if you have this need to distribute data. So if I'm um, distributing planning items and stuff across multiple parts uh, um, of the application stack or across multiple pieces, maybe I want to use blockchain to try and make sure that everything's replicated properly over the other side or whatever. But that's a technical concern that I've got to, calculate the risk of. It's not this isn't how I modernize my application. Look at using the blockchain, just so I can check a bingo box of buzzwords. Bingo box of buzzwords. There we go. I forgot to take my tablets this morning. Not healthy. Multi-tenancy is separating out groups of customers into their own databases. Partitioning the data. Oh my god. Liquid Sky has partitioned data by tenant identifier. Is that a double stack group? No. No, it's not double stacked. It's 24 ounces of coffee. I see. So NoSQL and store the partitions on different machines. But how you multi-tenant is not really. Yeah. So in this case, Liquid Sky has tenant identifier against all the data, right? So different tenants are going to yield different. So, but multiple databases all have that tenant identifier when they're representing the data. I could also build out, if I was trying to be really smart, I could build out a database per tenant. This would yield a lot of databases the way I'm designing this. Yeah. Yeah. So again, multi-tenancy is kind of like blockchain, right? It's an approach you might take if you find that, well, the reality is if you need multi-tenancy, you probably have multi-tenancy because even in your existing system, you will have the concept of customers having their own data. Now, this design is risky from a leak perspective. If I forget to put, you can put certain filters automatically, like by default on Entity Framework. But if I forget a tenant identifier filter on a query, then I can expose one tenant's data into another. And yeah, that would be dangerous. So it becomes a practice of dealing with it. So if you have one database per tenant, you end up that. But again, it's a data choice. If your application needs multi-tenancy, it likely will have multi-tenancy. It's not going to automatically make it more modern by giving it multi-tenancy when it doesn't have it. Like, your data shall not be separated by user, right? So, yeah. Anyway, so yesterday we got the requires permission and we got the planning item comments in. So now we load the comments. This starts to show what's going to happen to this screen when these are expanding out. Do I love it? I don't know. We'll see. I think the only other feature I've got to get on here is edit the requirement. Ghost Magic, hello. The whole concept of modern software is wrong. It's not fashion. Not wrong. Assuming that when we're thinking of modern, we're thinking new and shiny, right? Oh, it's the latest technologies, it's the latest designs. Yeah. We are very keen to move things into new things all the time. It is an urge you should fight. Build your software so that it can be changed. Legacy can become so legacy no one wants to use it anymore. Who's the no one? Don't forget, users don't necessarily. Users appreciate old, like they understand what when it looks old. They understand when it feels old. But if it's doing the thing they're asking it to do, they often don't care. They only complain when there's pain points like it's slow, it's inaccurate, right? So users will deal with the software for a lot longer than developers will. If it's working. Yeah, I'd rather be on the legacy end of the legacy modern continuum. One of the experiments I'm doing with this application, right, is like right now, everything's on .NET 8. But I can upgrade components to .NET 9. There's nothing stopping me from upgrading things to .NET 9. I want to stretch this out. I want to build with different technologies or build with different techniques and different tools. I have the option. I can swap out a piece if I want to. If I decide I want to try and build an API in Rust, I could potentially build an entire component in Rust just to prove I could, right? As long as it can provide an API and interact with a database or interact with a store, and I can send Kafka messages to it, it doesn't matter what I build it in, right? So I'm using this as an experiment in the way I'm building the software for my own benefit. Like, what are the challenges of doing that? If you build a monolith, right? Monolith's normally why people worry the most about legacy because the pieces aren't as easy to just change, right? There's a lot of investment in the code. There's a lot of investment in there. And then when the developers see new ways of doing things, it's not easy to just, well, let's make it a service. Let's pull this out here. Let's do this here. It's risky. Chandu, hello. How you doing? So Um, but I'd be interested, Ghost Magic, in hearing a little bit more um, in terms of how you feel the concept's wrong, and what would you propose is a better. Do you have a proposition on the better way to think about it? CQRS, C command, yes, CQRS, like ultimate CQRS. This is YARP. This is the YARP gateway. This is just a simple reverse proxy with a few little extra pieces added on to provide identity. I was using Ocelot, but the Ocelot developer upset me. I was swore then. So I was not best pleased. So I moved away. Usually we run a reverse proxy from Nginx, right? I believe that's a common way. I'm still getting my head into this world of even having a gateway. So the best way is to think in perspective of pros and cons. Many legacy solutions were used because they had a lot of pros, at least in the past. Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Pipeline's a placeholder name. It's a component of changes, really. So when a thing in the system changes, no, that will be cool in the end, but not right now. When a thing in the system changes, the changes component um, uh, calculates the difference of the object, and then the pipeline enriches the object to provide a more readable change description, so that the view can pick up the more readable version and then just display the changes. Kafka, yes. I'm using Kafka for event state transfer, so I'm publishing integration events, nothing more. I'm not using it to represent actions. There's no need for the rest of the system to have actions at this point. I am also using, it's not shown very clearly here, I am using RabbitMQ with mass transit as a service bus. So when I do need to send commands and publish actual events, I'm going to use service bus. And I could use Kafka as the backing for that, but I'm not going to. At this point, I'm keeping them separate as concepts for the clarity of how I'm using them. So realistically, if we're doing this right, this is it is let's call that transform. We call pipeline. Well, the YARP gets compiled into an image and it runs on Nginx anyway, I believe. .NET will make that Nginx. Will it? Does it give it an Nginx image? I'm not sure, if I'm honest. Will .NET do that? Because I use .NET to build the image. That would be useless because it would be doing that. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the gateway technology The only reason I'm using Gateway the way I am is because I am um, dealing with authentication or authorization at that level. So when a request comes through, I authenticate the request. Yeah, the ARP is on that. So I take the token and validate it with my identity component over here. Not full identity server, just my little implementation. I attach my permissions, generate a new token, and that token is the one that gets passed back through the application stack. So everything to the right here is authorized with my token, not with the auth0 token, because I'm dealing with multi-tenancy. So you may end up with your user may exist in multiple tenants, which should be supported, and this allows me to attach permissions on a tenant basis. Yeah, so YARP is a Microsoft team thing, I think. Like I said, this is a relatively new piece to me. I'm still getting my head around how these pieces work. I understand what they're doing overall, but I'm still getting to the point where I'm comfortable with configuring them and whatnot. So this overall, this application stack is very much a chance for me to exercise some of the ideas I've had over the last couple of years as to how I want to build an application and test them. Yup. Dear. So, so yesterday we had the comments. We got the comments loading. I got the settings screen fixed. So that works. We now need to test the permissions thing. So to do this, is a little bit strange. So right now I don't have any other place to put permissions, right? So we're going to add a new permission. Generate GUID. This is going to be planning item create. Do we want to add planning item add planning item? Is it create? I think it's create, yeah. Add generate GUID planning item edit. Edit planning and create items. So they added. What a weird interface. So if we do that, now refresh and go here, users there, create planning items, edit planning items. So I'm going to leave them off my user for right this second. We're then going to go over to, so the reason I've extended these out, by the way, to put in planning item create is because I want to start using the first part eventually to dictate whether you can see the entire component, right? So if you have a permission set in the component, you can see the thing. And then we can worry about visibility of things later. That's the kind of path I want to head down, but I'm not going to go to that extent right this second. I'm just going to test the permissions, get them in place, because that's part of what I said we would do. Where are you? Liquid Sky, where are you? Liquid sky. And, you know, yes, I'm developing. If you are, if you're interested in asking questions about the system, if you want to know more about what we're doing and how I'm doing it, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm not worried about getting distracted. It's easily done, but I'm trying to share what I do. I'm not perfect. So please feel free. So we got validate permissions behaviors. I want to navigate into the user's panel, toggle planning items add. See, I called it add there on the user. Log in as user, should not see the new item button on planning. Well, I am that user in this case. Introduce permissions check components in order to utilize permissions on the user profile. The user sees when a permission is not configured. Add a directive component and a permission system that will take the current user and capture and compare given a permissions. So user permissions are returned when requesting a single user, adding the concept of a profile load when the user logs in that fetches user profile. So we've done that part. We're now just testing this part. Did you thought through consistency levels when designing that diagram? Consistency levels in what respect? The aggregate of the consistency boundary. Casual, eventual, strong. Yes. So, yes, the system is an eventually consistent system, right? Overall, purely because if I publish something from the client, the goal is to capture the data as quickly as possible. So the thing you're asking it to save gets saved. The side effect of that is an integration event, which will take, milliseconds to seconds or minutes if things are slow, right? But the point is things are saved and stored where they need to be stored. They publish an integration event to Kafka. Kafka picks that up. The view will pick it up. It will pull the data. Even without changes, all these things are peripheral, right? They're not necessary for that data to be consistent. We now have that data. When we're creating data, data integrity is maintained by virtue of creating any dependencies in line. So if there's a missing piece, if there's let's say I have a user attached to my planning item and that user hasn't actually for some reason been confirmed in Kafka yet, but I've got it in the client for some reason, I'm referencing it, it will create the relevant data. So yeah, I have considered that. I have been in this world before, but never got to see it through to completion. So it's a different way of thinking about the software. If you're working with a monolith and you're storing to a single database, it is, not necessarily a monolith, but if you're storing to a single database, you have the data available to you, right? If you're querying from the database and inserting into the database, then you have more data availability. Whereas with this system, you have to wait for it to be there. Now, the way that's handled on the client is by using signal stores. So when I save something to the server, the information is stored in the signal store. So I still see it on the client. I get the ID of it, so I can update it or whatever, but it's done that. Pick the cache identity server over sticky session, right? I've not really set anything up there regarding that. The identity from right this second is, so this is just a simple service right now for me. It's just a simple web API for me to call. It's not a full identity provider. It's just my internal identity. Auth0 is doing my authentication. I sign in with that. I get the token, and I pass that token up with every request. So again, auth, that entire piece is something that I'm coming to from I've never had to implement this piece. I'm normally over here somewhere dealing with pieces in the back end, not with dealing with things in the front end. So this is a kind of chance for me to explore some of those problems, understand some of them a bit deeper, and grow on that. The databases, this is SQL Server. These are all SQL Server databases. This is a mix. Oh no, this is Mongo. This is SQL Server. We've got Redis in there. Yeah, I'm not. Yes, each service has its own DB. A TDD library, a friend of mine was building that did cache identity authentication stuff. He was TDDing it. I was kind of just giving my 2 cents on his implementation. He was TDDing it. Huh. I'm not sure what the label is on what Auth0 is giving me. Is that a sticky session? I'm not sure. These terms are things we kind of pick up when we need, and I haven't had to dig deep enough. I can understand how to use it. I'll move on and then learn more as I need to, rather than dig in deep, understand all the concepts and not be able to implement it. So yeah, these are plugin we can throw off level. Based upon other people's expectations of what a software architecture is, this is more distributed monolith. Yeah, event carried state transfer. So these are integration events. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's. I wouldn't say it's event driven. And yes, I am using CQRS Delta. I'm not using any eventing realistically to do much right this second. There will be eventing, but it's not an event-driven architecture. It's an event. It's not even event-based, I suppose. So again, event state transfer as to the link that Dota just sent. These are when data changes in these. So okay, I suppose there is an event-driven aspect to it. Within a component, right, a module here, there is domain events, right? I can react to things happening within that domain, right? So if I change a planning item, I add a planning item, I assign a planning item, there are events that happen. This would be the event-driven component, I suppose. But it's internal to this. The larger system does not care about these particular events right this second. These events are subscribed to, and I can react to them in different ways. So if I complete something, most of them are I'm publishing integration, right? Here, if I add a requirement, I publish the integration event for the requirement, but I also publish the planning item to say, by the way, the requirement's changed, right? So, but I'm publishing the state. I'm not publishing the requirements changed. It's up to the source system to understand what the event means. So to Martin Fowler's point, right, it's very data heavy because I'm transferring a lot of data all the time. If you change one field, I transfer the entire thing. I don't give you the requirement title changed. I don't give you the requirement intended outcome changed. I give you the requirement now looks like this. And I am the source of truth. Therefore, you listen to this, right? If you want the current state, this is the current state. Yeah. But Kafka carries messages between aggregates. No. Kafka's not carrying any messages for aggregates. Again, there's not really established aggregates as such in this. So there are events internally. So individually, there are events in here. But when I get to the Kafka piece, the piece that communicates with the other components, all it is a so here's my topics, right? If I go into a message, this is a change. So this is a change, right? A planning item changed. It occurred on here. It's an update. Before I had 0 attachments. Afterwards, I have 1 attachment, right? That's the change. The planning item. Here's the data, right? So I have an attachment and who associated it. And then I have some requirements. These are just IDs because requirements is published as an independent piece. So this is the current state of this planning item, right? That's it. I have a source. I know why it came out of the system. Yes. Yeah. So I can react to events internal to a component, but I publish state globally. And the benefit of that is I don't need these components to have knowledge of any of the components. They have their own data. As long as they have an ID, they don't care about if I have a user referenced on a planning item, right? I just have an ID. This doesn't validate that. It doesn't care. As long as there's an ID there and I pass it a GUID, it'll say, yeah, that's a user. Because it doesn't validate that piece. The user piece is handled in tenant management, right? So when I add a user, I create a user and publish the user to Kafka, and the view combines those 2 pieces of information to give you a, Terry did the planning item. But I don't need. Early on, I got into the habit of, oh well, I need the user in here now because I'm asking it to have a user, and then I realized I don't need that. So events in here can react to things happening. So the most complicated one we have so far is when you complete a sprint. So in the task component, right, you can complete a sprint. So you update the sprint, and this is what the update sprint command looks like, right? So we say update sprint status, right? Don't know why that can be null, but whatever. In here, first we validate, can we transition to this state? If we can't, it just doesn't do anything. Nothing happens, nothing changes, nothing saves, so it's fine. Actually, that's wrong. I probably need to do a bit more there. If it is active now, we mark it as started. If it's completed, we mark it as completed. Otherwise, we just set the status to what the current status is set to, right? Well, not otherwise. We always do that. On sprint completed, 2 things happen. We first publish the fact that sprint now looks like this, right? So we publish to Kafka sprint X has status completed, and it, that's just the sprint state. We then publish another internal event Not really, because it's not using the events to construct the current status. It's just taking the integration event, as I'm referring to it as, is just a here's what this object looks like now. Now it does come wrapped in a little bit of extra stuff. I do know why it was created, so I could react to that if I wanted to. Oh, I see. But in theory, I could play back the events between aggregates and it could rebuild the state. In theory. But ultimately, it's basically if a system hasn't seen the planning item, let's say I start subscribing to the planning items from a new system, right? Let's say I put a reporting system in place and I start subscribing to the planning items. I could actually start the reporting system up and change a planning item, and now it would have a planning item over here because it would deal with the fact, oh, I have never seen this planning item before. I'll just create it. Oh, I've seen this planning item before. I'll update it. Right? Those concepts will be built in. So a system could be brought up with no data in it. A few things change, and now all of a sudden it's got data in it because you don't have to, in a reporting case, I'd seed it, but the idea is that the current state of that object is published. I don't have to, if I base it on events like, oh, planning item created, etc. This system, if I add a new system, if I add a new component, it'll have never received the created event. Yeah. So Kafka is never the source of truth. The source of truth for any single component is its organizing component. So a planning item, the only place you can trust a planning item is in planning, right? It does mean that I can rebuild Vue, right? If I have all the ETL scripts set up, right, I could wipe this system out and run the ETL scripts and rebuild Vue just by querying all these databases. And then it'd be in a current state and now Kafka. So, or I could build a brand new version of the Vue. I could build a parallel version of the Vue and have a gateway point to a completely different API, right? The rest of the system doesn't change. It'll still get all the events. It can still do what it needs to do. I could build a parallel version. And that's, again, one of the things I think helps me in terms of future upgrades is that we have that option of saying, oh, I want to build a new version of the Vue. I want to build it using a different technology. I want to do that. Well, let's experiment. Let's put a new version up. You could even put it in production and have it capture the data and test it internally, right? That is an option. And it doesn't affect anything that's going on. You could put a new gateway in front of it. You could put a new client on it. You could build literally back end for front end stuff, right? You could build using, just set up a different gateway, different APIs, and yeah, I could do that. But this one publishes another command internally. So it says remove the sprint from each of the tasks. So it loops through all the tasks in here and sends the command to remove the sprint. Well, that will remove the sprint from the task because it's telling it to do that. Right. All this does is literally removes the sprint. That's all it needs to do. But this will add a domain event of task updated. So this is kind of the event-driven piece internally. And that will then publish the integration event for that task. And that task will now have no sprint attached to it when everyone consumes it. But again, the most important part is that this is, again, these are very small. These are very focused. These are not great pieces of logic. The system is reacting to the events. And by the way, these are the events being published are only done when the data that's triggered the publish has been committed to the database. So there's as much transactional integrity as I can get. Because first order of business, save the data, then worry about events. If I need to, we can republish the events as well. All the events are. So yeah. Now it is to the point from Chandu of in terms of integrity or in terms of consistency, etc. It is up to me to make sure that I check the dates on these updates to make sure I don't try and take an event that I have already seen or, you know, it's stepping over data. I need to make sure that my system says, "Oh, I don't need this event because it's older than the one I've actually got the current version of." But anyway, let's get back to this. So we are going to leave this off. And again, if you have more questions, thoughts, opinions, idempotent. There we go. Thank you, DB9. I know the word. I always forget the word, or I forget to use the word. And if you think I'm doing something wrong, if you think I'm missing something, or I'm naive in some way on any of these, I'm okay to talk about it, right? I don't mind learning or seeing. I'll be lurking around for a bit after work soon. No worries, Delta. Thank you very much. Good talking as always. Right. Some of this, I've not learned a lot of this from reading a lot of books and studying a lot of videos and whatnot. I've learned a lot of this through doing. I learned a lot. We got to talk to a few end service bus consultants, including Udi Dahan, and him share some of his insights into things. And when you start to think about systems in events, or even like ask yourself about the concepts, like just because I do it this way now in the database doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it. And kind of rethinking, like I said earlier on, I thought that box was double. Oh, there you go. Early on, I had this. Oh, I need to have the user in here, and I was trying to pull all this information in, and I'm like, well, now planning as a reference to tenant management, I can't do that. That's not good. And when I realized that I didn't actually need that much complexity, it was quite enlightening. But it was a very different way of thinking about it, because obviously you want to be, oh, well, the user should be valid. Well, to this piece, what is valid, right? What does it mean for this to be valid? That's a link, by the way. I'm starting to try and put some deeper insights into each of these components. So it was quite enlightening and useful to think about, as far as I don't need all that information because it will be consumed over here. And using GraphQL this way really feels kind of nice. So what we're going to do is we are going to go and put a label. So we've been moving things around, which is going to cause some challenges. We go to the planning items, and over here we have open dialog toggle filters. So come back to this new planning item. There's new planning item. Do you plan to sell this app? I would like to. I would like to take it to the point of a product. That is the goal at this point. Yes. So I want to treat it like that. But that being said, I don't want to rush it. Right? It is what it is. I have got a 6-month goal of getting it in a more useful state. I think that's achievable. Within 6 months, having things like initiatives, the sprints, fully working, the teams, the groups, etc., all those things implemented. Yeah. You think that's ambitious? Yeah. You know, when I first started it, it started as a little project that I wanted to play around with and see if I could figure out some better ways. Um, as I started to build on it, I realized that if I was going to commit to this thing, thinking of it as a product, thinking of it as a product, thinking of it as something I want to make a product will help drive me forward. It's at the point now where it's a lot of fun to work in. There's enough of it that every single feature adds 10 more things to do. As a solo developer, I would never recommend doing this. This is madness, right? There's so many moving parts. There's so many pieces that can go wrong. A little change here can cause, like, oh, I'll just refactor this, it's fine, can cause immeasurable challenges because there's no one to talk to. There's no one to bounce an idea off in terms of the larger system like this. So, um, yeah. But I want to set it as a goal. I would like to say I want to make it a product. I think it can help. I think it does something. I use tools every day. I've used tools like Jira for a long time. I understand a lot of the challenges I have with them and I see with them. And again, one of my key goals here is to make this um, increase visibility. I want to make it so that you are able to um, you know, here's a test. This won't work because I'm cached. Yeah, that's going to take a sec. That's the eventual consistency piece kicking me. This is where I'm going to learn over time more patterns for updates and stuff on the Signal Store. I've got to learn more how to use Signal Store effectively and then push notifications down to the client to tell them things have changed. That's going to be a challenge. Now that is my profile, right? Now if I go back here, I don't. Did the audio die or did my brain? Sorry. Um, I didn't know how to express what I was thinking. So I stopped talking so the mic goes quiet. You cut the noise gate. So I was not expecting I didn't refresh that, did I? Did I refresh that? I don't think I refreshed it. I think I went back out and came back in. Let's do that again. So new planning item is there, right? I can click new planning item. If I go in here, go to users, I'm not going to refresh, uncheck that. Now that triggers an event to the back end. So I need to put notifications back in to show you that it does that. So that triggers an event, triggers a command to send to the back end save of the permissions. It updates the permissions again to tenant management. Yes, tenant management gets updated here for user permission. And that publishes the GraphQL, that publishes the event, the integration event. This picks it up and pulls my permissions. Why you wanted to use GraphQL over REST? Primarily because I've never used GraphQL. I've never got an effective GraphQL implementation working. And the way it's working now, I kind of like it. I prefer it over REST. It allows me to ask different information at different times from the same thing without having to change or create new endpoints. It gives me a lot of flexibility on those pieces. Some of this technology in here is here because I want to learn more how to use it, and I've got a real application for it. Creating endpoints. So these all use APIs, right? These are all posts, puts, etc. Right. So the command side of things is all regular. It's actually fast endpoints. The query side of things, the GraphQL side of things, what this does is allows me to build queries. So what I do is I separate out a set of views. I actually create SQL views, and I expose the view context here. So I have an update context that updates the tables in the background. The GraphQL side never exposes that. It exposes the view versions of these objects, and I can control the data there. I can calculate data there in the view, and just represent these as regular objects. I can use projections. So if I ask for more information, the query is adapted to use the join. Whereas if I don't ask for that information, I don't get the join. I don't incur the cost there. With a typical API, if I need, let's say I go here. Right. Okay. It's not doing what it should do. Okay. Sorry, I just want to check one thing. I unchecked it. I go back here. That's boggling my brain. That's hurting a little bit. I'll go into that in a minute. But anyway, let's say I go here. I want to select from planning items the title, who it's assigned to, the status, and the review date. That's all I care about. I can make a query to the endpoint and get just that information. If I just want a list of planning items, but I want to get the requirements attached to it, I can add the requirements, or I can count the requirements. I can do that in the GraphQL. Whereas with a typical API, I'd have to create different endpoints for those things. I'd have to figure out how I'm defining them. I have to be like, oh, well, hold on. Well, I'm getting planning items, but I'm getting planning item detail. How do you represent that in REST? Or maybe that's planning items slash ID slash detail or whatever. But yeah, it just feels messy to build and gives me a lot more control over the fields I ask for. So if I change the schema, I can adapt that and add those extra columns in the view without building a new API or anything. So it's I'm enjoying using it so far. But again, if and when I find the limitations of it, if I find that a REST API fits better with my need, I can swap it out. I can put an API in there. It's not a problem. Sure, design. I never used it either, but I read it has some issues, and it likely does. But I can read all like about people's issues with it, but maybe their issues are different experiences. Maybe their issues have different approaches. You know, maybe they're caused by the fact that they're trying to put it on a database that is also their right database, and they're trying to make a schema fit. There's all manner of reasons why, and that's why I've struggled with GraphQL in the past. Is I've had a monolith, and someone's like, put GraphQL on it. I'm like, well, how does that work? Because then you don't want to expose the DB context, because you don't want to create a bunch of views. You don't want to add extra things. This is custom built for this purpose. So maybe I'm not hitting some of those issues because I'm not trying to fit it into the square peg into the round hole. But I can experiment, right? It's your design, so you do you, but I'm struggling to understand why you'd fragment the databases and potentially put obstacles in the way of maintaining its integrity. Why I'd fragment the database? Ownership and behavior. These databases can be very small and very fast and they're just written to. The query database side of things doesn't have to be a SQL server. I can use different technologies there. These are MongoDBs, right? Because I don't need the relational aspects. I don't need the relational aspects in most of these. These don't even need to be SQL databases if I don't want them to be. And to be honest, one of them wasn't originally. One of them was a Couchbase DB. Ticketing was originally on Couchbase. And I don't think it causes problems for my integrity. I'm storing the data that I'm asking it to store. Zons, hello. How you doing? So the UI is the combination of everything, right? Like if I want to add a new planning item, I can add a new planning item. If I want to add a comment, I can add a comment. It gets stored, and the focus is, storing that data and the events that happen and the events that happen aside from it. Hi, Nerdy Biker. How you doing? Good afternoon. Yeah, this started as a little bit of an exploration of an architecture I wanted to use previously, right? Even if I combine these things, like planning, tasks, attachments, they'd be separate concepts in a single API. If they were in the same database, they pull each other down. If and also developers will join things, right? Oh well, it's quicker to join them there, so let's just join them there. The schemas being separate, the data they have is their data. It publishes out, so I don't think it necessarily harms integrity. So the thing that's confusing me, and I'm perfectly happy to carry on a conversation around this, but I'd like to understand more and think more about this. I don't mind considering the failings as well as the positives of this way of doing things. I think it's a good way to understand where I'm lacking. So this requires attribute uses the permission service, right? The permission service basically checks to see if this permission is permitted in the collection on the user profile, right? Which is a cached request to the user profile endpoint. When I go and get the users in the settings, that is get set current user. User store, users query, fetch all, also all users sorted, active sorted users, fetch one subscribe, identity. So I'm changing the store here. The thing that's confusing me is the two calls are not the same. The GraphQL side of things is a cached request for user profile. Unless I'm mistaken, I don't see. Yeah. I never go and get the profile again. So I don't understand how this is hidden still. I mean, it's great that it's working. It's awesome that it's working, but I don't understand why. Napalm, hello. Good morning. I have an appointment today, so start early and actually get to see a larger chunk of stream. Nice. Nice. Surly Dev, hello. Good afternoon. So again, coming back onto the topic before, right? I would not recommend a solo developer do this. Having done this enough, this is this is madness from a solo developer perspective. Is it the system I wanted to build? Absolutely. It is. It is what I want it to be. I have changed it. I am happy to pull things out and change things, rebuild things, condense things. It does not bother me. I have made major refactorings to this several times throughout the course of the last 14 months. But I am confident that it is solving the problems I want it to solve. Did you read the Head First Design Patterns book? I have it. I have probably flicked through it. I do not write software based upon a design pattern. I write the software and then see if it fits the pattern, and if it does, align closer to the pattern so that other people can understand there was a pattern there. So, but I probably have. I've looked at design patterns. I've read the Django 4 book. So yeah, I never target a pattern to begin with. I always start with what I want to write. Oftentimes, my way of doing code is I write the code I want to read and then make that work. So I try and write it. So the way the overall system works, when you are coming in, let's say I'm adding a planning item, right? So let's go back here, go to user permissions, change my permission. We need to put edit in a second. Let's put edit there. No, let's remove edit right now. Let's make sure that's saved. That's taking a sweet time. There you go. Right there. New planning item. If I create a new planning item, add configuring available permissions. The goal of this is permissions, new permissions be added as part of development process, assigned to Jeffrey, assign project, next UI, chain, next UI, planning, and let's review that on Monday. So when we save this, right, there's a weird issue with the way that this grid is working, right? So if I go here now, it'll be at the bottom. Now, if I expand it, it'll jump up to the top when it loads. So again, eventual consistency, these are the sorts of, the mitigations are going to be necessary on the client side here because that data hasn't made it all the way through, right? So this request is going to either fail or it's going to finish eventually, and you'll see it jumps back up to the top because then the grid sorts it, and then, yeah, now it's expanded. That's a UI concern that I can figure out eventually. When I save a planning item, the planning item API, I had to tell a colleague they wrote an API in Python that really should be in a faster language for scale purposes. Why did colleague write API in Python to begin with if that's not a thing to do? That should have been a discussion long before they got to writing an API. That's even worse. Shouldn't have been able to write a Python API. Should have been consulted and agreed upon. Obviously, I don't know the circumstance specifically. But it is one thing that should be kept in mind. Like, again, I'm going to come back to the diagram because it's easy to point to. I can build any component I want in any language or any framework I want in this. Should I? No. consistency matters from an organizational perspective. If an API is marginally faster in a different language or slower in a different language, isn't the real concern. Is can you as an organization support it? If someone gets to develop in whatever they want, like if I say, oh, I've got a new technology to use, right? I have learned through bitter experience the cost of doing that, right? Um, you shouldn't be allowed to just go and develop something the way you want to develop it because you feel like doing it, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're junior or not, you shouldn't do it. It should be a discussion that is agreed upon, because when you do that, you don't only create a difficulty for your fellow developers to have to work with, you force them to have to understand that. And whether you're going to be the one maintaining it or not does not matter, because no one is guaranteed to be in the same role for the rest of their life, right? You will leave, you will pass that dependency on someone else. And when you pick a new technology, you now add a thing to the company to say, when you're looking for someone, they need experience of Python, right? Because otherwise, someone comes in and doesn't have experience of Python, they're gonna hack at that thing if they need to change it or fix it. They're not going to go in with experience and knowledge, and they don't have the time to go off and become a Python expert before they touch it. So you add a dependency on the organization whenever you do that, and it shouldn't be allowed. It can be discussed and the organization can agree, but you shouldn't just bring new technologies in for the sake of new technologies. New to you technologies, not always new technologies. Yeah, juniors should not be allowed to pick what they use to get the job done. If you're working in a C sharp, in a .NET shop, .NET, yeah, no, you're good. It's all good. The purpose of the stream is software development, discussion, etc. This is all part of the game. Yeah, it's especially a junior developer should not be allowed to go off and build something in Python. Yeah. So anyway, let me explain. You create a new planning item. It goes through the API. We go to the add planning item command. So the endpoint here is literally a pass through. I'm not using, so fast endpoints does have some mediator components of its own. It does have the ability to do some mediation. I'm not using those components. I'm using mediator as a library separate. Later on, I'll go back and look at what fast endpoints can do. And again, if I build a new API around another component, I can experiment with those things then to see if I like them better or how they fit. All that's doing is saying, create a planning item. If there's any projects that was passed up, associate them with it as well. And it triggers the event. That's wrong. That's going to create two events for one. But anyway, it was. But ultimately, the goal is that it's a very small piece of code. It does the thing it needs to do. It gets into the database. The database then triggers those. The committing of the database is interceptors at the entity framework piece that publish the events, and then those get reacted to and published out separately. So we have the data. Coming back around on the point of why I've fragmented it so much. I'm in a classic Java plus Spring software company, but I was allowed to develop new tools in Kotlin, so that's nice. Yeah, you should talk to your boss if you want to deviate from the existing technologies. But is Kotlin that much of a leap for a Java developer? I've not looked, so yeah. Yeah, it's natural. I I would doubt there's very many, I'll say, technologists out there that don't want to play with new things, right? Um, oh wow. Yeah. It's a, but I think that's again why finding a side project that you can engage in, that you can experiment with, is useful, so that you can learn those new technologies, and then you know it's useful to bring in technology, but you've got to have enough of it. Like I've done it too many times where I've thought I've understood enough about a technology to use it, and then we hit the oh, there's the problem, right? Like to the point of GraphQL. Whoever it was said earlier on, I've there are problems. There might be. I haven't hit them yet, and I might hit them. Yeah. Morning trap. There's a cost to new things. Diversity in your environment can become quite the mess. Yes. Kotlin also targets the JVM, um, but the developer experience is much better. To be fair, they probably learned a lot from the decades of Java and start from a clean slate. Yeah. Um, that's cool. Um, yeah, nothing, nothing's perfect, and so I have learned to listen to the inner voice when things feel painful. The chances are I'm using it wrong. Um, I've really learned to listen to that a little bit more going through this. Like when I feel like I'm forcing data into the wrong place, or I feel like I'm struggling with the technology, the likelihood is that I'm not using it the correct way. Um, and I stop and rethink, unless it's Angular and the client side, in which case I just accept that it's all painful because I don't know the difference between good or bad. I've said I've seen shops force a stack that honestly needs moved on from just because they were always done it that way. That is not good either on the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, the what we've always done it this way is not. Um, well, sometimes it's difficult to move on because the technology is doing what it needs to do. Your business is making money, and a drastic change is required to move away from what you have. That's where it takes someone who has some level of vision and ability to kind of shift that step forward. But it's not going to happen by, oh, let's just build this new piece in Java, or build this new piece in Python, or build this new piece in whatever other, oh, Rust will fix it, right? You've then got multiple problems. So I don't know. This is a fun world we live in. Okay, let's go and do planning items. Oh, I don't have edit yet. Yep, a place built some terrible web platforms that was creaking and wanted to do greenfield on it. I did it in MVC, which was version 3, and the writing was on the wall for web forms at the time. I took the review hit that year. Jokes. It's Wednesday, thankfully. we got to Wednesday. Um, well, Iron streams Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and he is I was listening for a good point to start doing shouts without being disruptive. It's all good. Um, One is another .NET developer who has been building work stuff of late. Has built Financial Manager project and been working on some very cool ETL stuff the last couple of months for work. And if you like .NET development, I highly recommend checking out One Line Stream. Sorry, my brain, I've just gone into... Oh, I know what I'm doing. I have got edit. I'm thinking of the wrong thing. I hide the action. So planning items has a grid. We have this. We have actions, and basically we do requires equals planning item edit. Ads came in. I work for a defense contractor. We were not allowed to change the software's tech stack unless the customer asked for it with a contract amendment. Hi, Reg, by the way. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different reasons why change, right? Yeah, it's an important thing to remember. The business doesn't always, it's not just always about the business doesn't realize the benefits of using a new technology. It's just the risks and the costs involved in changing to a new technology. It's not just the oh, look, we can now do it 10 times quicker. It's much cheaper, right? It's oh, well, now our developers don't understand how to use that framework. So they have to take time, which means they slow down on any development. That's going to cost us. Oh, there's more mistakes because the developers are learning. That's going to cost us. Customers are going to get angry because things aren't working the same way. That's going to cost us, right? There's all sorts of other pieces that go into making a decision on using a technology. And you can't take oh, well, it's just a simple API or it's just this. You have to take a blanket. Let's just hold off. That said, Reginald, typically I don't want it to be me. Look at the US Navy still paying for XP support. You know, some dev has said, hey, I ported this to a modern OS, but the military's afraid of it. Yeah. My company is doing a full rewrite now, already like 2 years into it, and I doubt they will finish another 5. So some of my opinions on how this is done, how software does, is because I've been there. I've been into the let's build a new version of the system, and what you realize is there's a lot of rules and history in the existing system that people are completely overlooking. So when you deliver new versions of things, they're like, well, it's not doing this and this and this. Well, did you ask it to when we were planning it? No, but the old system does it. Well, but you don't want to just lift the code from the old system and move it into a new one. Yeah, it's painful, but also the chance to change things. A lot of people don't see the opportunity of adapting their processes, changing things. So what they'll ask for is based upon what they do, and that isn't always the best thing for what you're doing, right? Yeah, underestimation is yeah. It's why getting to a very consistent pattern with development helps, making sure you understand the pieces, making sure developers are aware of the whys, aware of the software, aware of the business reasons, and can push back quicker. If developers are just tools, if they're just following what they're told to do, they're not paying attention to the bigger picture, to the business requirements, to the needs, or they're not allowed to. There's always that. That's often challenging as well. Okay, so I shouldn't see a pencil. There you go. I've put the requires on there. I don't see the pencil. Let's go to the user. Let's change this to allow edit. I know some developers are definitely tools. There's developers that are just focused on just let me go home at the end of the day. Like I want a paycheck. You tell me what to do. I'll make it work at whatever cost, and it'll be done. They don't consider the larger system. They don't consider the architecture, the design, nothing. It's just like, okay, I can fit this in here. Let's put it in there. It fits. Let's go. I wish that wasn't the case. There you go. Now I can edit. I'm still confused as to why this is working, by the way. It shouldn't work. Oh, I do know why it's working. Because it's applying it to my profile. This user is only downloaded once. I happen to have my profile in the same. I'm not using a different profile object. It is my user. I'm changing it. I'll go back here. Oh, do I have to reload it to do it? Yes. 50% why why isn't this working? So why is this working? Yeah. So the reason that disappeared then, even though I went back and forth, is I didn't trigger a reload of the user, right? So when I click on it here, that sends the save again to eventual consistency, as mentioned before. That isn't now on the client, right? If I click back on here, now it's there. So if now I go back there, the pencil's there. If I go in, users there, uncheck that, go here, go here. You see it's still checked. Go there, go there. There you go. Now it's gone. Now it's gone because it's loaded the user. Ultimately, the answer is to figure out the right path for I need to make sure that I'm only using the store version of that query so that I get what is in the store, not what is on the server. What's happening is when I click on that, it makes a request to the server. I need to not do that. I need to go to the store and check to see is it outdated, and if it is outdated, go and fetch the current, right? Part of that is I need to figure out the right pattern for notifying the client side. Hey, by the way, things have changed. You need to make a request. I don't quite get that. I haven't got my head around how to do that effectively yet. More than welcome to provide any opinions on that if you have any. If you've done this sort of thing before, that would be very much appreciated. This is the relatively new part. So now if I go back here, I don't see a pencil. Okay, so let's go here, 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 here. So there's two areas I can put that, right? I can also now, on the server side, now I know the permission is going to exist. I can still put that, and I'll just stop running for a second. Planning, edit. So I can put a post here. I can put planning item create. So I need that permission to be able to do that now. I can wrap it up into policies. I don't think I'm going to use policies much more. I think that's probably the permission is there. Also the put, I want that there. And that's edit. I think I called it right. Yeah. Create and edit. And there we go. So now, obviously, I've got to figure out somewhere to put these. I've got to figure out these end up in the view database, right? Because that's where I'm going to be able to see them. But what owns this? What triggers the need to create these? So these come in with the identifier. When I update them, I actually go into tenant management and I associate user permissions. So you can see for this tenant, this user, this permission. That's it. That's all that happens. I don't know why I've got updated there because I'm going to have updated. That's all that goes in there. The integration event publishes, the view picks it up, and then the view creates user permissions where it looks up those two things, joins them, right? So if for whatever reason the permission hasn't actually made it to here yet, how that would happen, I don't know. But being that I'm displaying it, but if it hadn't, it would still create the permission, and this record would still be the data integrity is maintained. But yeah, the permissions are there. So user permissions here looks like this, and then the view for the user is this, the user permissions view. So I can join the permission with the user. So the user doesn't get that, but I can do a join when I get the user and pull the permissions. And this is a cross join. This is, yeah, cross join permissions, left join. So I basically include all the permissions for every user and toggle the permitted. So I can pull all the permissions down for every single user. And have the checkboxes. But then the user profile still contains everything. It's just everything that's in there is going to be permitted. Because in this term, that is, I'll say that, it might actually be the same thing. View, queries, user profile. Yeah, it's the same thing. So it will actually have all the permissions available in the profile right this second. Ultimately, I want it to just be the list of actual permissions. So the profile view eventually won't be just be a regular user. That is my intent. I'll pull more than that. You know, preferences, things like that. Server still building. So there you go. We come on. There you go. That's quite the pop in. Like, I like this layout more than what's there. I like the color. I like it feels smoother than the current version. But that being said, it's also a little bit more difficult to navigate. I think the right-hand side panel design has some merit. I'm not sure. So this won't be the final version of the UI for certain, but we'll get there. Okay, so I should be able to add a new planning item. Um, yeah, Tyndall is another .NET developer. Has been a little unwell recently, so not been streaming, but hopefully going to make his return in the near future. Worked on a lot more Blazor recently, right? But yeah. Went to go test the alternator on the fiance's car before dropping $500 on replacement. Everything's fine. Intermittent fault? Yeah. So, um, if verifying that permissions work, the user permissions are validated on the server. So the way I'll test this is I will remove the requires from the planning button, but remove the permission. And then, so we'll save this. Save that. Bring up that. Huh. Ironically, that gave me a 403. I didn't actually save. I'm sure that is ironic. It's a different kind of onic. Permissions, planning item, create. So if I go to gateway, YARP, configuration, YARP infrastructure transform providers, basically go here and make a request, my internal token, view, permissions. Oh, well, that ain't good, is it? McLee, welcome in. Hope you're well. As one line's blurb says, I'm making a project management and planning application. Um, sorry, I'll zoom in a little bit where. um, it's kind of large on my screen. Brain worrying. Yeah, so I've been building this application now for the last 14 months. Basically, I am building this because no, it's Mojo. I want to make the developer experience for project management and planning better. I want them to be out of it unless they need to be in it, right? I want to provide all the tools necessary for the product team, for the management team to gather the requirements, feed the information into the system, and allow developers to stay away from that until they actually need to talk about it. Whether that be setting up meetings and chats and allowing the developers to add tasks, etc. Next feature. Oh joy. So in general, the reason I stream this is I want to share the development, I want to share the successes, the failures, and also allow people to, share their experiences and their opinions on what I'm doing. Lord HT Power. Hello, welcome in. What I'm trying to figure out this second is identity did not store that information, did it? Permissions, user permissions. Yeah. There's your problem. Three 19222E92. Forward more face. There's quite a lot of my face on the screen. That needs to be fixed. I don't like being on the camera that much. Hard to see on TV. Fortunately, there's a fine balance between me being able to be productive and customizing it for everyone's visuals, unfortunately. So, but if you have questions, thoughts, opinions, please feel free. More than happy to talk. Which user? 31922. So is the problem that I don't have those permissions? I'm expecting the permissions in two places. That's the problem. I'm expecting these two. Copy. Maybe identity owns the permissions. Paste. Whoa. No. Let's add. No. Let's help here. It's fine. It's fine. Why is someone yelling too early? Okay. I just need to step away for 1 minute. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Went to my fiance's car this morning and it made me question the craftsmanship going on over at Dodge. Yeah. Okay, so with those records there, do I get a different result as I come through the so this is set to it took the user permissions, but it's set to I haven't created the component that basically says, okay, the permissions are going to come from somewhere. this was an identity management piece, the permissions were probably created in here anyway. So it might be that I need to trigger the permissions from here and have them created in the view side of things. But one of them owns it. And I think identity probably owns the permissions is the problem. So I created them manually in the view, but didn't create them in the identity piece, which meant that when the permissions request comes in, they don't exist. So let's see what happens now. What I'm expecting is that breakpoint I put in the gateway before. We want that back once more. Now, when we request something, our token no. Okay. Why are you failing? Again, to the point of zoom, I can't zoom in any further. If there's anything specific you want to see, please see. Soon everybody will be making six figures, except software devs. So the query here is endpoints get, we go and get permissions for user, and that is a request. User permissions, select, include permission, select the permission.name. So select from user permissions where tenant identifier equals user identifier equals join permissions p up on up dot permission ID equals p dot ID. So let's go to our user permissions. Oh, our users over here. That's the user I want, right? That'd be my user identifier. And my tenants, I believe, is that one. User permissions 3.1. That's Jeffrey. Tenant 1. Yeah. And that's my tenant. That's legit. P.name. That's right. Permissions. User permissions, permission ID. Did it create? No. 8.7. Did it just not create them? User permissions, receiver, update permissions. User permissions by tenant. Through permissions, acquire the permission. It should. So the thing is here, this should have created 2 blank records because they didn't exist in here. Nothing published their names, so there should be 2 records with blank entries in here. So what's happening is delete range async. So I delete everything out and then loop through the permissions that we're passing in. Let's test. Let's go to here. No, helps if you're in the right version of the app. Here, users, there. Let's remove them. Where user identifier equals, let's get that user identifier. I think I'd be able to spell what? User identifier at this point, right? Let's go and change that again. So it's always possible. So the worst that would have happened there I would have ended up with 2 permissions with blank names, but the right identifiers was my hope. It said I updated them, right? If I go to here, look at my users. Oh. Oh, tell me I've got 2. No, identity should be doing this. So those are the permission. That's the permission set for that user. There's lag though. Why is there lag? I look forward to my pass of monitoring and alerting. Someone showed me some stuff last week as well and how they're using Grafana and stuff, which was nice. Hotel. Just yet another technology to get to. And yet again, a reason why I would not recommend a solo dev take something like this. So what I think's happening is the consumer, this is erroring. Yes, it is. Well, that restarts it. Nice. So did that work then? Did that just clear? Yeah, it did. So for some reason that probably, I wonder if it's the permission not being there. We'll have to test that. But that looked like that worked then. So if I go back to this, yeah, there's the 2 new permissions. So now, yeah, those are there now. So if I do this now, I'll get the right permissions. There's planning item create. Now I should be able to create a planning item without problems. Hey, Redrum, how you doing? Create a new planning item, sample planning item. This planning item should go through. Now, yes, this failed before. It just went away. Nothing happened. That's a bad experience. I do not want to divert. Every time I get to a new piece of the application, I do not want to divert onto what happens if there's a 403, what happens if this. Yes, it's an important piece, but I haven't figured out how I want to globally handle those things. Like I want to standardize around how the behavior should come about. And if I'm building application change, if I'm changing the application all over the place anyway, spending that sort of time right this second isn't going to benefit me. So again, logging, exception handling. I saw an article today from Milan on kind of using exception handlers in .NET to create a kind of a user-friendly version of the message that says, "Oh, by the way, an error occurred. Please do this." from the API side, but also logging the exception and capturing those things and doing that. And then I still think, that is a strategy. That is a component I do not want to spend time doing. I will not put try catches throughout the code, especially while developing, because I'm going to catch these sorts of things. I'm going to see these sorts of things. They're going to hurt me. And every time I ignore them, they're going to cause, next time I go and add a permission, I'm going to hit the same problem if I don't go and do something soon. So it's not that I'm being ignorant of them. It's that I want to make sure that I'm giving them the right attention at the right time. I'm not spending. It's too costly for me to keep diverting and spending weeks going down one path when I'm going to come back, do the next screen, hit new issues, have to do it a totally different way, or change the way I'm doing it. And yeah, I want to make it a strategy. So this, when I save, should end up at the bottom. Right, so that got there now, right? So that's actually good enough to tell me that that saved. Which is cool. That means that the permissions are applied and working and being validated on the server side. So we validated it by virtue of mistake before. And actually, I think I unchecked them. So this is going to be interesting. Oh no, they're there. But again, you see this one is sat at the bottom. When I do that, it'll move up to the top or close to the top. So this planning item should go through. Yeah, planning item with permissions. Okay. So what did we get working today? Permissions are now being respected. Yes, there's some refinement. Yes, there's some pieces that need to be handled in terms of how do permissions get added to the system? How do they propagate through the system? Who owns them is another challenge. Right now, I haven't actually answered that question. Right now, a copy and paste is all I'm getting. Things are coming along. I'm hoping that I can kind of get the tasks piece added. What I want to do with tasks, by the way, is whereas we have requirements right now. What I'm thinking is, because one of the problems the existing design has is that the tasks are kind of just here as a number, and you kind of add a task through hitting this checkbox, and it pops up a dialog, etc. What I'm going to do is make them here, so that they're going to take up 50% of the space, and the tasks are going to be listed here for a given thing. That way you can open them, you can edit them from here, you can navigate down, and we can put labels and stuff on them to indicate, are they in a sprint, are they active, are they, what status are they in? So you'll be able to view that from here. So once that's working, we're kind of back to where the application currently is. I've got to fix this. For some reason, this is erroring now as well, because, why would PrimeNG not just keep some of the things the same? But yeah. You too, Napalm. Thank you very much for stopping by and coming hanging out for a bit. Appreciate it. And the conversation as well. May your Python journey be easy. Yeah, we're making progress. We're getting back to where we were. The goal of this is to try and get the application in the features a little bit more workable, a little bit more friendly, get things like the ability to edit things, attach tasks and comments, etc. onto other things, and then put another version of this, go through that deployment piece again, put another version of this live so that people can test it again. If you are a subscriber to the stream, you are currently able to test the existing version. If you go to Liquid Sky Software and sign up, and then go in Discord and let me know, I can give you the right permissions. But once this version is live, once this newest version is live, things will be a bit different. Yeah. And we're just going to keep iterating on this, adding the feature set, now permissions are working, we'll start to get to subscriptions and lots more fun things. And there we go. But anyway, if you want to talk more about this, if you want to talk more about the topics we've talked about today, if you want to see more on the diagrams, etc., you're more than welcome to join the Discord. I will happily share screenshots of things. The code is not open source, but that doesn't mean I won't talk about it and share parts of it with you, because I do believe in the whole growth thing. And I'm happy to continue conversations, even if it's you're doing this wrong, this is terrible. I'm happy to accept the conversation as long as you're willing to have a conversation about why it's terrible. So, yeah. Okay, so we do not have. Where's maybe? Maybe's not been around the last couple of days. No, maybe's not around. I kind of like to raid into app devs before game devs. Well, it looks like it's an Anna day. Anna is developing a game engine. A very smart developer, very capable developer, working on all sorts of cool stuff, building tools from scratch. So she's been working on that for a few months as well. So we're going to raid over to Anna. Don't forget, today, online streams. It's Wednesday, 12-ish, 11:30 she's been going live a bit, I think, Eastern time. But yeah, so let's go raid Anna. I'll be back tomorrow with more of this. Hopefully I get some task stuff in, and we can proceed with yet more features tomorrow and get this working. I really want to figure out that ordering thing as well. That's driving me crazy. All good. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. I'll see you all again soon. Take care all. Bye.